We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis Meseches Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 53b. On the previous summit, the Mishnah said that by Eshes Av, if a person has relations with his mother, who's also the wife of his father, so it could be two violations. It could be a violation of having relations with one's mother, and it can also be a violation of having relations with the wife of one's father. And in the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda said that this idea that it's the wife of the father, it has to be that the wife was allowed to marry the father. Otherwise, she's not really considered the wife of the father. And the Gemara clarified, we can't be saying that Rabbi Yehuda is saying this by Chayve Krisis and Chayve Mises Bezin, because that everybody would agree to. If it was a situation where she wasn't allowed to marry the father, and the level of prohibition was either a Chi of Kares or a Chi of Misa, so then everybody agrees that Kiddushin is not Tofsin, Kiddushin doesn't take effect, and she's not considered the wife of the father. And so therefore the Gemara said on the previous summit that Rabbi Yehuda must mean that we're talking about Chayve Lavin, and it shows that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva that Ein Kiddushin Tofsin b'Chayve Lavin. Kiddushin do not take effect when there's a marriage, but the prohibition to that marriage is a lav, is a negative commandment. By Chayve Lavin we say that Kiddushin does not take effect. And the Gemara is in the middle of asking on that from a Mishnah in Yevamis, and we're going to be trying to prove that Rabbi Yehuda, on the contrary, he holds that Kiddushin is Tofes by Chayve Lavin. The Mishnah in Yevamis is talking about Isser Mitzvah and Isser Kedusha by a Yavam and Yavam. We're talking about a situation where Yibam is supposed to be performed, but it cannot be performed because, again, there's some kind of prohibition for her, for the widow, to marry the brother-in-law. And the two levels of prohibition are Isser Mitzvah and Isser Kedusha. And we say that in these cases it's a lower kind of Isser that they're not allowed to marry. If it's a lower kind of Isser, so it's not just that they don't do Yibam, but they actually should at least do Chalitza. If it was a situation of Chayve Krisis or Chayve Mises Bezdin that they can't marry, so then already we say there's no Yibam whatsoever. They don't even need to do Chalitza. There's no way for them to do Yibam. But by Isser Mitzvah, by Isser Kedusha, where it's a lower level of violation, so then we say that they should do Chalitza. And the Gemara now continues and clarifies what exactly that Mishnah in Yevamis meant. The Gemara continues, Isser Mitzvah Shnios Midivrei Sofrim. When we say Isser Mitzvah, what we really mean is what's called Shnios, secondary level prohibitions. That's only Durabanan violations. So there she's not allowed to marry the Yavam on a Durabanan level again, so she should just do Chalitza. V'amai kari lu Isser Mitzvah. Now why would an Isser Midrabanan be called Isser Mitzvah? Shem Mitzvah Lishmoa Divrei Chachavim, because it's a mitzvah to listen to what the Chachavim say. And Isser Kedusha, what does it mean when we say Isser Kedusha? That would be at the level of a lav, as the Gemara now explains. Almona l'kohen gadol. Let's say, for example, she's a widow, and the brother-in-law is a kohen gadol, so that's an Isser lav. Or Grusha v'chalutza l'kohen hedyo. Let's say she's a divorcee, or she's a chalutza, not allowed to marry a regular kohen, and let's say this brother-in-law is a kohen. V'amai kari lu Isser Kedusha. Why is that called Isser Kedusha? D'chsiv, because it's written in the pasuk Kedoshim yu le'lokeim, and so therefore it uses this word Kedusha, and the idea again is that's Isser Kedusha. V'tanya alon, we learned a baraisa on this Mishnah in Yevamis that Rabbi Yehuda machlif chilufe, that Rabbi Yehuda machlif, that Rabbi Yehuda switches it around. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda says that Isser Mitzvah is actually a lav and Isser Kedusha is actually an Isser Midrabanan. But the point is, Rabbi Yehuda fundamentally agrees with the Mishnah. He just switches around what the terms mean, which is what the Gemara now notes. Chilufe hu demachlif. So he mixes up, he mixes what those terms mean. But hachalitza boy, but fundamentally he agrees that by both Isser Mitzvah and Isser Kedusha, chalitza is required. And so therefore it seems like Rabbi Yehuda does not hold like Rabbi Akiva. It seems like Rabbi Yehuda holds that yes, you have a prohibition over here, you have a violation. There's an Isser Abonan, there's an Isser Lav, but Kiddushin is Tofes. It's not at the same level as a Chi of Misa or a Chi of Kares, and that's why you do Chalitza in this situation, because there's more, so to speak, of a possibility of doing Yibum, but you want to avoid the Isser, so we do Chalitza and get out of it. And that's what the Gemara now asks, V'isalka daitach, if it should enter your mind, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Akiva, Svirule, that Rabbi Yehuda holds like Rabbi Akiva, that Ein Kiddushin Tofsin b'Chayve Lavin, that Chayve Lavin are treated the same as Chayve Krisos. So Michli, let us see. Chayve Lavin, Rabbi Akiva, when it comes to Chayve Lavin, according to Rabbi Akiva, Chayve Krisos Dami, those are the equivalent of Chayve Krisos. We treat that the same way. The Chayve Krisos, Lav b'nei Chalitza v'Yibam Ninu, and when it comes to Chayve Krisos, there is no Chalitza and Yibam over there at all. You don't do anything because we say by Chayve Krisos, there's no possibility of Kiddushin. So here it seems like Rabbi Yehuda does not agree with Rabbi Akiva. And the Gemara answers to this, Lidvar of the Tanakama Amar Omar, actually, Rabbi Yehuda really, he totally disagrees with the Tanakama, and Rabbi Yehuda really would hold like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehuda really would hold that by Lavin, by an Isser Lav, that's the same thing as Chayve Krisus. And therefore Rabbi Yehuda himself would say that there's by Chayve Lavin, there's no need whatsoever for Chalitza. But Rabbi Yehuda is responding according to the Tanakama. According to the Tanakama that does not hold like Rabbi Akiva. According to the Tanakama that makes a distinction between Chayve Krisus and between Chayve Lavin, still Rabbi Yehuda would say that you switch around what the terms actually mean. V'lei lo svirule, but he himself does not hold like the Tanakama because again, Rabbi Yehuda actually holds like Rabbi Akiva that Chayve Lavin are treated like Chayve Krisus. And Rashi explains, Rabbi Yehuda Machlif, Rabbi Yehuda switches the terms, Shayashona Mafarish Isser Mitzvah, Almana L'Kohen Gadol. He understands that Isser Mitzvah is something like Almana L'Kohen Gadol, which is a lav. Techsib B'Sov Sefer Vayikra, because it's written at the end of Sefer Vayikra, Keshehishlam Kol Mitzvahs Kahuna, when it finishes discussing all the mitzvahs of Kahuna, Eila HaMitzvahs. It uses the word Eila HaMitzvahs, so that's why Isser Mitzvah is referring to that. And Isser Kedusha would be Shnios Midivrei Sofrim. Isser Kedusha would be secondary violations that are Midrabanan. Kegon, and Rashi gives some examples. Aim Imo, the mother of his mother, Ve'aim Aviv, and the mother of his father. V'amai Kari Le Isser Kedusha. Now, why is that called Isser Kedusha? Shamar LeChacham, because the Chachamim say to the person, Kadesh Atzmecha B'mutter Lach, even though technically this might be mutter, sanctify yourself, Le'esrachik, distance yourself, Af Mizu, even from this, Af Mizu HaMutter, even from this which is technically mutter, Kadesh Loti Koshel B'Isura, so you shouldn't stumble in an actual Isser, Aval Chalitza boy, but again, Chalitza would be required. And the Gemara continues, Ki Yasser Tzchak, when Rabbi Yitzchak came from Eretz Yisrael, Tani Kidetanan, he had a brisa like our Mishnah. We should note over here that the brisa on the previous summon, which brought Rabbi Yehuda, which is the Rabbi Yehuda we're just discussing, that has a different version of Rabbi Yehuda than in our Mishnah. Because the brisa says that Rabbi Yehuda says in a situation where the person's mother was not allowed to marry the person's father, so there we say there's only a violation of being with his mother, but there's no violation of being with the wife of the father because she's not really a legitimate wife of the father. But actually in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda said that in general you can only be chayiv for one violation. If a person is with his mother, who's also the wife of his father, in all situations, the only violation will be that he's with his mother. Rashi on the previous Amud noted that as well, and we'll see Rashi over here. When Rabbi Yitzchak came, so he had a brisa which said the version of Rabbi Yehuda like our Mishnah, and the brisa says as follows: Rabbi Yehuda says, Eino chayiv elo mishama ein belvad. In a situation where a person has relations with his mother, who's also the wife of his father, he's only going to be chayiv one. He's only going to be chayiv for being with his mother. And the Gemara says, V'tayim amayin, what's the reason? Amar Abaye says the Amar Krutz, because the pasuk says im chahi. It says she is your mother. Misham imo ata mechayvo v'i ata mechayvo misham eshasav. He's only going to be chayiv because it's his mother. He's not going to be chayiv also because it's the wife of the father. But the Gemara says if that's the source, elamayat, according to that, ervas eshes avicha lo segala ervas avicha hi. But there's a pasuk that says that a person can have a situation where there's a violation because he's with the wife of his father. Eshes avicha lo segala. It says the wife of your father. Are you going to make the drasha the other way? Misham eshes avat hamechayvo, in a situation where she's the wife of your father and also your mother, you're only chayiv. He's only chayiv because it's eshes av, the wife of the father. V'iyat hamechayvo misham imo. But you're not going to be chayiv because it's his mother. You're not going to say the drasha the other way. Ella, rather, imo shehi eshes aviv koi hacha u'memayitla. Rather, what's going on is as follows: his mother, who's also the wife of his father, that's what we're talking about over here, and there's an exclusion. And koi hacha u'memayitla, but then over here also we're talking about it and we're making an exclusion. Hashta imo she'ena eshes aviv mechayiv. But if it's true that a mother that's not the wife of his father, we say chayiv. Eshes aviv she'ena imo mechayiv. And also if it's the wife of his father who's not his mother, we say chayiv. So imo she eshes aviv. But if you're talking about his mother who's also the wife of his father, lo mechayiv klal, does the pasuk mean to say that there's no chayiv whatsoever? There's no way that that's what it means. Vesu, and further, l'rabbanan nami, according to the rabbanan also, haksiv imchahi. It says the same pasuk of imchahi. So this cannot be the source for Rabbi Yehuda. And so rather the Gemara says, Ella rather, Hahumi boile l'chid Rav Shisha breid Rav Idi. Rather, this pasuk over here, imchahi, is really needed for something else. It's needed for Rav Shisha, the son of Rav Idi, teaches, Rav Yehuda nami, Hahumi boile l'chid Rav Shisha breid Rav Idi. And according to Rav Yehuda also, it's going to need for what Rav Shisha breid Rav Idi teaches. And Rashi explains, Tani Kedetanan, Aisi Masnisa Biyode, when Rabbi Yitzchak came from Eretz Yisrael, he brought a brisa with him. The Tani Bod Rabbi Yehuda Omer Af Beru'uya La'aviv Ka'amar De'eno Chayev Ela Mishum Ein Belvad Uchedetnan B'Masnis. And this brisa said that according to Rabbi Yehuda, if a person has relations with his mother, and that mother, of course, is married to his father, even if she was fit to marry the father, even in that situation, still we say that the only chiyuv is because he had relations with his mother. We don't say that there are two chiyuvim, both for aim and for Eishes Aviv, and that's the same version of Rabbi Yehuda that we had in the Mishnah. And then the Gemara brought the pasuk imchahi. It says it's your mother. Ervas avicha ve'ervas imcha lo segala imchahi lamali. Why does it have to say that extra phrase imchahi? Imchahi. Why does it have to say that? Elalomar loch. Rather, it's to say to you shem yesh ba shnei shemos aim ve'eshasav. It's telling you exactly this idea. If there are two violations, the fact that she's his mother and also the wife of his father, ein chachayev elam mishamimo, that the only chiyuv is because it's his mother. But the Gemara then asked if that's really the source, if the pasuk of imchahi is the source. Elameata de dorasht imchahi lemuute. If you're going to say that imchahi is an exclusion, so what about when the pasuk says ervas avichahi t'chsiv gabe eshasav? That's what it says by the wife of the father. You should darshan it the same way. Tidrushay nami lemuute shem aim mina. You should darshan it to exclude the violation by the mother. V'nei madachi kamar. You should say it means as follows: hach ervas eshas of the reisha dekra. If you have another violation together with that, kagon sheimcha, for example, it's your mother also, lo tischayev ela misham eshasav. We should say that there's only a violation of eshasav. And Rashi continues, the Gemara then asked, ela imo she eshasav bitmiya. The Gemara here is asking a question. Kilomar means to say as follows: lidvarecha kayhacha umoyit lame iser aim. You're going to have this pasuk that's excluding iser aim, and kayhacha umoyit lame iser eshasav. You have another pasuk that seems to be excluding eshasav. Imkein al karchach legam. If that's the case, you're going to completely exclude everything. To kroy hadadi lo nema desasri. We're not going to say that the psukim contradict one another. And Rashi continues further down. V'li nira, Rashi says, it seems to me, the hashta imo she'ena eshasaviv, that line in the Gemara which said hashta imo she'ena eshasaviv, his mother who's not the wife of his father, lishna yaseru, that's actually extra language. We should take that out. V'hachi garsin, and the proper text should be as follows: kayhacha umemayitla, kayhacha umemayitla. Again, you're going to have an exclusion in both directions. V'sulo midi, and that's enough text to have in the Gemara. You don't need anything further. V'hachi kakashale, and the Gemara is simply asking as follows: imkein kashu kroy hadadi. If you're going to have both psukim, both being exclusions, they contradict each other. Ha mechayiv le beimo umemayid le me'eshasav. One pasuk is saying he's chayiv, he's liable because it's his mother, but he's not liable because it's the wife of his father. And the other pasuk is the opposite. V'hai memayid le me'imo mechayiv be'eshasav. The other one is excluding the violation of his mother and saying you're chayiv for eshasav. And then the Gemara asked further, v'su and further, i'iko lemidrashay lahai hi lemiyuta. If you're going to darshan this as an exclusion, ki agavnu rabbanon ma'avdile, then what are the rabbanon going to do? El al karchach lo mashme mehi miyuta. Obviously, you have to say, because we don't have an exclusion for the Rabbanan, that the he is not an exclusion at all. L'meimar di isra ze levado alevelo acher. It does not mean to say that it's only this isra and nothing else. V'chi mashma hi miyuta hachi mashma. And when we're saying that he is an exclusion, it's as follows: imcha hi ve'ein acheres imcha. What it really means is, this is your mother, someone else is not your mother. And if you're not able to darshan it that way, so it's not an exclusion. Rather, you have to say it's coming for a different drasha. And what drasha is that? It's for the drasha of Rav Shisha Berei Ravidi. This is B'Shili Shmaitin, this is at the end of the sugya. La'onesh di'imo she'eno eshasaviv. It's talking about a punishment for his mother who's not the wife of his father. The lo ksiv ba d'meihem bum. It doesn't say there the words d'meihem bum. To be'eshas aviv ksiv. There it says by eshes aviv, by the wife of his father, it says d'meihem bum. There it says d'meihem bum. Umashma bein eshes aviv she'ena imo bein she'imo, and that's mashma whether it's the wife of his father that's not his mother or if she is his mother. Avol imo she'ena eshes aviv. But when it comes to his mother who's not the wife of his father, azhara ksiv, there's a warning there. It says ervas imchalo segala. It says you can't be with your mother. Umashma afa b'she'ena eshes aviv. That would imply even if she's not the wife of his father. Avol onesh lo ksiva, but we don't see any punishment there. V'yolif la me imchahi. That we learn out from imchahi. We understand it to mean as follows: just like your mother, who's also the wife of your father, there is this punishment. So to your mother, who's not the wife of your father, on Ashba, there is that punishment. And that's the same for Rabbi Yehuda. That's what we use the pasuk for. drasha achrina l'chayiv oleh, and also the he by ervas avicha we have for a drasha to say chayiv afilu la'achar misas aviv, even after the death of his father. Kilomer b'haviyasor tehei liola, meaning it should be like that forever. Kilakamon v'shmaitin, as the sugi is going to go on to say, v'lav l'mu'utei meisura asi. The point is that these psukim are not meant to exclude from isurim. And so the Gemara continues with her answer for the source of Rabbi Yehuda's halacha. Elamar Ravacha b'reid Ravika, rather Ravacha, the son of Ravika, says, Amar Kra, the reason why we say there's only one violation in a situation where it's his mother and the wife of the father, because the pasuk says ervasa, it says ervasa, and we learn from there, mishum erva achas atam mechayvo. You're only going to say he's chayev for one arayas, v'atam mechayvo mishum shtei ervas. You're not going to say it's for two arayas. But the Gemara continues, if that's the source, Elamayat, according to that, Ervas kaloscha lo sagala eshes bin chahi, talks about you can't be with your daughter-in-law, lo sagala ervasa, hachanami misham erva achas atamachayvo v'atamachayvo misham shtei ervas. Are you going to say the same thing over there? You're going to say that he's only chay for one arayas and not for two? But that's not true in that situation. But we learned in the Mishnah, habal kaloso, if somebody has relations with his daughter-in-law, chayiv oleh misham kaloso umisham eshes ish, he's chayiv because it's his daughter-in-law, and also because it's a married woman. Bein b'chai beno, bein lachar misas beno, and then it said that's true whether the son is alive or not alive. There's still a problem of being with his daughter-in-law. And over there, v'lo polag Rabbi Yehuda, over there we don't find that Rabbi Yehuda argues. Ella, rather you have to say over there, kevan dechad gufu, since it's all one person, afagav detrei isurei ninu, even though it's two separate violations, ksiv ervasa, that still falls under the pasuk of ervasa. Hachanami here also, kevan dechad gufu, since it's one person, afagav detrei isurei ninu, even though it's two violations, ksiv ervasa, it's written ervasa, it still falls under that category. And so the Gemara gives another source for Rabbi Yehuda. Alama Rava, rather, Rava says, Kasava Rabbi Yehuda holds, Ervas Avicha, when it says Ervas Avicha, Zu Eishas Avicha, that refers to the wife of your father, Umaisi Lo B'Gzeira Shave, and he brings through it Gzeira Shave, Umashma Bein Eishas Aviv She'imo, Bein Eishas Aviv She'ena Imo, it implies whether it's his father who's also his mother, whether it's the wife of his father that's not his mother, Imo She'ena Eishas Aviv Minayin. Now, how do I know if he's with his mother who's not the wife of his father? What's the source for that? Talmud lomar ervas imcha lo segala imchahi. It says again ervas imcha lo segala imchahi. Misham imo atamechayvo, and we learn from there he's chayiv if he's with his mother. He's chayiv for that violation. Via atamechayvo misham eishes aviv, but he's not chayiv because of the violation of eishes aviv. And Rashi explains, Elam Rava, rather Rava says, Liola mikra kama dehi be'ervas imcha miyuta mashma. Really, we go back to the answer that we're learning from that first pasuk. It says ervas imchahi, and that actually is an exclusion. It means to say kedava darshinan meikara, as we darshan before, that again, if she's both his mother and also the wife of his father, we say according to Rabbi Yehuda, only chayiv one violation, just chayiv for the mother. Umiyu, now nevertheless, he de ervas avicha. What about that he of ervas avicha, where we asked if that's the case, that also should be an exclusion, and then you have contradictory exclusions. The question was, isn't that also an exclusion from the Isra of the mother? So that's what we're saying, La Pirchi, that's not a question. Why is that not a question? Because in the beginning of the pasuk, where it mentions Ervas Avicha, again it's talking about the wife of his father. V'lo mishum Isra aim. There, the context of the pasuk has nothing to do with the Isra, the violation to be with one's mother. And there's going to be a Gzeir Shava brought later on. Nemar kan Ervas Avicha lo segala. It says over here, again, Ervas Avicha lo segala. V'nemar lahalon Ervas Aviv Gila. It says later on, it says Ervas Aviv Gila. And we learn as follows, Malahalon bi'ishas hakosim medaber, just like over there we're talking about a situation of marriage. Afkan bi'ishas hakosim medaber, so too over here, it's a situation of ishas of marriage. Umashmol an isura bein ishas aviv she'imo, ubein ishas aviv she'eno imo. And the point is that the isser, this violation, is talking about a wife of his father, whether it's his mother or not. The chayiv olem mishum isser ishas av, and the chayiv is that there's an isser of ishas av, of being with the wife of the father. Hilkach chi hadar ksiv b'seifa de'idach kra. Therefore, with all of that in mind, when it says at the end of that other pasuk, Ervas Avichahi, it uses that phrase Ervas Avichahi, which the question was, shouldn't that be an exclusion? Lav lemedrish minei misham av velo misham em. It's not to make that drush of exclusion and saying it's a problem of Eishes Av and not a problem of his mother. Because the beginning of the pasuk in context is talking about the fact that it's the wife of his father. That's why it's chayiv. Bein eino imo, bein hi imo. And the whole point is it's talking about a situation where she may or may not be his mother. Hilkach l'Reb Yehuda ervas avicha hi. Therefore, according to Reb Yehuda, what is the exclusion of ervas avicha hi? It can't be excluding mother, because again, the context of the pasuk is whether it's the mother or not. Rather, lemuute mishum eshes ish. It's coming for a different exclusion altogether. That in a situation of the wife or the father, that's the violation, and not eshes ish. Not just the fact that in general she's a woman. We're going to say mukim lo lekamon. That's going to be what we're going to say later on. De lo tema shem eshes ish lo nofik michlal eshes av deresha dekra. Don't think that the shame eshes ish is not excluded because it's already the wife or the father. No, it's just the wife or the father. That's the only violation. We don't have the violation of eshes ish. Da'av ivnami amiso, because you could have said that his father is also amiso. It's also just another person, another married woman. Vikari nami bevel eshes amischa. You can refer to it as the pasuk says. You're not allowed to be with the wife of amischa, of the other person from your nation. Lo sitin shechavtecha. It says already you can't be with an eshes ish. Maybe that should be an additional isser. V'ervas eshes avicha hideresha muki leazhoras eshes av la'achar misa. And then Rashi points out when it says in the beginning of the pasuk, the ervas eshes avicha hi, that part of the pasuk is talking about a warning for eshes av, that you're warned not to be with the wife of the father even after death, meaning even after the father dies. Aval hidagabe imcha Rabbi Yehuda, but the he that's written by the word imcha, according to Rabbi Yehuda, again lemuute me'isr eshes av. Also, that is coming to exclude the isr eshes av in a situation where a person's with the mother. So that's going to be the only violation. You're not going to have an additional violation of eshes av. Because we would have learned from the beginning of the pasuk that he would have been chayiv because of eshes av when she's both his mother and the wife of his father. Because again, Rabbi Yehuda holds when it says ervas avicha in the beginning of that pasuk, that's what it's talking about, the wife of your father. V'lo avicha b'mishkav zachar mamish. It's not talking about actually being with your father. It's not talking about a situation of mishkav zachar. That's learned out from a gzeira shava later on. So again, the implication of the pasuk would have been that even when it's his mother, he's chayiv for the violation of being with the wife of his father. The ervas imcha lahavi imo anusa. When it says ervas imcha, that includes even if it's his mother who's in anusa, meaning a situation where they are not married. And so that's why it then says imchahi to exclude that understanding. And to say no, in such a situation where it's the wife of his father and also his mother, he's only chayiv because it's his mother. And Rashi continues, Rav Yehuda doesn't need the pasuk of imchahi for the teaching we just had above of Rav Shisha Brei Ravidi. Again, Rav Shisha Brei Ravidi, he used imchahi to say that in a situation where it's just his mother and not the wife of his father, we need a pasuk to say there's a punishment. There was no demehem bum there to say the punishment for that case. And so that's what Rav Shisha Brei Ravidi, that's what he used imchahi for, but that Rav Yehuda doesn't need it for. The kevan de islay high gezer shav de lekamon, since he does hold, since Rav Yehuda does hold of the Gezerah Shava later on, Minei Nafkale Nami Onesh Le'imo, from that very same Gezerah Shava, he can learn out the punishment for his mother, She'ena Eshes Aviv, for the mother who's not also the wife of his father. To the Rabbanan, the Leslu Gezerah Shava, because according to the Rabbanan who don't have that Gezerah Shava, Nafkalu Mehaikra de Imchahi, they're going to need to use the pasuk of Imchahi. They use it for Had Rav Shisha Brei Ravidi. They use it for the teaching of Rav Shisha Brei Ravidi. V'lemu'ute be'isr Eshes Av lo mishtamelu Rabbanan. Now, in terms of excluding it from the Isser Eshes Av, that the Rabbanan don't need, Mishum de Kasavri Hay Ervas Avicha Deresha Dekra, because they happen to hold that the beginning of that pasuk of Ervas Avicha has nothing to do with this. It's actually b'mishkav Zocher Ma'amish Kamer. That's talking about when a person is with his actual father in Mishkav Zocher Kidel Kamon, as we're going to say later on. V'lav be'Isser Eshes Av Ayri, and the pasuk's not talking over there about a situation of being with the wife of the father. Midi, it's not talking about that at all. Hilkach Loasa Seifa Lemu'ute Midi de Lo Damile. Therefore, you wouldn't say that the end of the pasuk is excluding something that has nothing to do with what's going on in the beginning of the pasuk. And so essentially Rashi is saying whether or not imchahi is used for the exclusion of Rabbi Yehuda depends on his interpretation of the other psukim, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Dalid Amud Aleph.